Every once in a while, a machine comes along that captures a moment in time so completely it feels less like a product and more like a cultural timestamp. It represents speed, ambition, and the mechanical optimism of its era. You can smell it before you even see it. The mixture of fuel and adrenaline that defined a generation of riders chasing the perfect corner. There was a period when motorcycles were raw and loud, where skill mattered more than electronics, and precision came from the rider's wrist rather than a computer chip. That spirit lives on in one unforgettable racer from the early 1990s. A bike that looked like it rolled straight off a Grand Prix grid but somehow carried a license plate. Before traction control and ride-by-wire, there was this legend, proving that the road could be a racetrack if you had the nerve. Stay tuned, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what iconic machine you want to see next. In 1993, the Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition arrived as a two-stroke symphony written for the street but born from the racetrack. This machine was not just another mid-capacity sport bike. It was a visual and mechanical tribute to Suzuki's Grand Prix heritage, wrapped in the unmistakable white and red livery that paid homage to the factory race team. At its heart lay a 249 cubic centimeters liquid-cooled, 70-degree V-twin engine, paired with a 6-speed gearbox that demanded precision from its rider. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition was engineered to emulate the agility and aggression of a true GP bike, and every line of its bodywork, every flick of its throttle, reminded riders of that ambition. The Lucky Strike graphics were not merely decoration. They represented a connection to the glory days of two-stroke racing, to the lean angles of Kevin Schwantz and the relentless pursuit of perfection on the world stage. The RGV250's engine was a marvel of compact performance. It was equipped with Suzuki's Advanced Power Control System, or SAPC, which managed exhaust port timing to flatten the notorious two-stroke power spike. Even with that system, the bike remained a wild ride. Power arrived suddenly and aggressively at around 8,000 revolutions per minute, forcing the rider to stay alert or be left behind. At its peak, it delivered around 60 horsepower in a package that weighed barely over 300 pounds dry. This ratio gave it the kind of acceleration and responsiveness that modern quarter-liter machines rarely match. The sound was intoxicating. The shrill metallic wail of two cylinders in harmony as they gulped air and fuel, transforming them into forward momentum that seemed endless. Beneath the surface, Suzuki's engineers obsessed over handling. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition carried an aluminum twin-spar frame that looked almost identical to the one used on the factory GP bikes. Suspension came from Showa, fully adjustable front and rear, allowing riders to tailor the setup for the street or the track. The rear banana swing arm, with its distinctive curve, was not a styling choice. It provided clearance for the exhaust pipes and improved the bike's rigidity balance. Every component felt designed to translate intent into motion. When you leaned it over, it responded instantly. When you braked hard into a corner, the chassis stayed stable yet alive, feeding back every inch of the pavement beneath you. What made the 1993 Lucky Strike Edition truly special, though, was its exclusivity. It was a limited production model released to celebrate Suzuki's racing success, and it wore its pedigree proudly. The paint scheme mirrored the RGV500S competing in the 500 cubic centimeters World Championship, while the numbered plaque on the triple clamp reminded owners they were holding a piece of racing history. Even the seat cowl and fairing shape were refined to echo the silhouette of a GP bike. Riders who bought one knew they were not just purchasing transportation. They were acquiring a link to Suzuki's most glorious racing chapter. Yet, the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition was not for everyone. It demanded respect and a steady hand. Its two-stroke power band punished mistakes and rewarded smoothness. Unlike four-strokes of the same era, which offered linear acceleration, the RGV's engine was binary. Quiet, then suddenly alive with ferocity. This unpredictability made it thrilling, but also unforgiving. New riders who underestimated it often found themselves humbled. But for those who learned to master its rhythm, the experience was pure addiction. Every ride felt like a qualifying lap, every corner, an opportunity to flirt with perfection. Part of the charm of the Lucky Strike Edition was how it blurred the line between road and race machine. Many owners would arrive at weekend meets still wearing leathers and smelling of two-stroke oil, the exhaust residue clinging to their jackets like a badge of honor. Onlookers could tell immediately that this was not a commuter bike. The Lucky Strike graphics gleamed under sunlight, The polished frame reflected ambition, and the twin exhausts whispered promises of speed. For a generation of riders, it represented a pinnacle, a machine that captured the fantasy of racing in tangible form. The bike's character also reflected the mechanical simplicity of its era. There were no riding modes, no traction control, and no anti-lock brakes. You relied entirely on your reflexes, your understanding of weight transfer, and your ability to predict what the tires would do next. It was mechanical honesty in its purest form. Every vibration, every pulse from the engine told you exactly what was happening beneath you. The connection between rider and machine was immediate and unfiltered, something that has become increasingly rare in modern motorcycles. Maintenance was equally demanding. Two-stroke engines required regular top-end rebuilds, careful tuning of the carburetors, and meticulous attention to oil ratios. But owners didn't complain. They took pride in it. Working on the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition was part of the experience, part of the ritual that kept the bond between rider and machine alive. The sound of the premix sloshing in the tank, the faint blue haze trailing behind on startup, the rhythmic pulse of the twin engine at idle. These were not inconveniences, they were part of the allure. In Japan and Europe, where 250 cubic centimeter sport bikes enjoyed immense popularity, the Lucky Strike Edition quickly became a cult icon. It stood out among rivals for its precise chassis and raw aggression. Many professional riders who grew up on these machines credit them for teaching control, patience, and the art of carrying speed through corners. In that sense, the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition was more than a motorcycle. It was a teacher, a test of will, and a symbol of a fast-disappearing philosophy, that riding should be as much about mastery as it is about machinery. Today, looking back at 1993, the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition represents a moment when racing and road bikes were almost indistinguishable. It was an era before electronics tamed performance, when manufacturers built machines for enthusiasts, not algorithms. To ride one was to understand the fine line between exhilaration and consequence. A line Suzuki drew perfectly. It wasn't the fastest or most powerful motorcycle on paper, but it didn't need to be. Its greatness lay in how it made the rider feel. That feeling, of total engagement and precision, is what made the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition unforgettable. The Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition embodied everything intoxicating about the two-stroke era, but understanding why it mattered requires looking at the forces that shaped it. By 1993, racing technology had become the ultimate marketing tool, and Suzuki's engineers were obsessed with transferring as much of that expertise as possible to their road machines. The Lucky Strike Edition was not a cosmetic exercise. It was the culmination of lessons learned from years of Grand Prix development, compressed into a lightweight street package. Every component, from the crankshaft design to the exhaust routing, was derived from race data and rider feedback. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition felt like a factory experiment that somehow slipped through corporate caution and landed in the hands of the public. Its engine was more than a power plant. It was a declaration of engineering bravado. Suzuki's two-stroke V-twin was built to deliver maximum efficiency from minimal displacement. Each cylinder housed a bridged exhaust port for improved scavenging, and the power valves worked tirelessly to broaden the narrow power band that defined earlier two-strokes. The SAPC system adjusted the exhaust valve timing and ignition curves based on throttle position and RPM, creating a rare blend of tractability and violence. On paper, 60 horsepower may not sound world-changing, but when paired with its featherweight chassis, the result was breathtaking. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition could sprint from a standstill to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds, and its top speed exceeded 130 miles per hour. But these numbers only told half the story. The other half was the sensation. That surge when the power band hit, the way the front wheel danced under acceleration, the immediacy of the throttle response. The chassis engineering was equally bold. The aluminum twin-spar frame wasn't a simplified copy of Suzuki's 500 cubic centimeters GP design. It was a scaled interpretation tuned specifically for the RGV's unique dynamics. The rigidity balance was critical, and Suzuki achieved it by pairing an extruded main beam with cast junctions to maintain strength without excess weight. Combined with the banana swing arm, the bike handled mid-corner transitions with a fluid precision that felt almost telepathic. Riders often said it seemed to anticipate input rather than respond to it. The suspension, with full adjustability, allowed fine-tuning for every surface. a luxury in an era when many bikes offered little more than preload adjustment. The braking setup featured dual 300mm front discs gripped by 4 piston calipers, giving it tremendous stopping power for its size. The feedback was pure and unfiltered, requiring deliberate control but rewarding confidence. It was a machine that punished hesitation and rewarded assertiveness, mirroring the demands of the racetrack. Riding the Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition required not just technical ability but also mental sharpness. The challenge was part of its charm. It made you better by being uncompromising. Even the ergonomics told a story. The seat height was tall, the clip-ons were low, and the foot pegs were rear set. Comfort was sacrificed for aerodynamics, and long rides could leave wrists aching and knees cramped. Yet, those who loved it wouldn't have changed a thing. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition was not meant to be comfortable. It was meant to make you feel alive. It put you in the mindset of a racer, crouched over the tank, eyes scanning for apexes. The wind resistance, the roar of the engine, and the vibration through the bars formed a symphony of feedback that reminded you this was not transportation. It was participation. The cultural appeal of the Lucky Strike branding cannot be overstated. In the early 1990s, racing liveries were more than marketing. They were symbols of aspiration. The white base color, intersected by bold red arcs and gold accents, made the RGV250 instantly recognizable. It was rebellious, glamorous, and fast, a perfect reflection of its time. Owners didn't just buy a motorcycle. They bought an identity. It was a statement that said they valued performance and individuality over practicality. The limited availability only amplified its desirability, turning it into a collectible before it even left showrooms. Behind the glamour, however, there were practical realities. Two-stroke performance came with maintenance demands that tested the dedication of owners. Piston rings wore quickly, spark plugs fouled, and exhaust power valves needed cleaning to prevent carbon buildup. But these tasks were almost ceremonial. A small price for the privilege of owning something so visceral. It was a machine that rewarded attention. A well-maintained RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition could perform flawlessly for years, its mechanical heart beating with the same energy as the day it left the factory. Neglect it, and it would remind you who was in charge. The RGV250's competition came from other manufacturers pursuing the same goal, to create the ultimate 250 cubic centimeters race replica. Yet, none captured the balance of aggression and finesse quite like Suzuki did. While rivals focused on peak horsepower or ultralight construction, the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition achieved a harmony that made it feel complete. It didn't just perform, it communicated. That communication, the clarity between throttle, tire, and chassis, is what riders still talk about decades later. The bike's engineering also foreshadowed the challenges that would end its reign. Two-stroke engines, despite their efficiency in size and weight, struggled to meet tightening emission standards. Suzuki refined the design with precision carburation and advanced oiling systems, but the tide of regulation was relentless. The Lucky Strike Edition stood as one of the final and finest examples of how far the technology could go before the world moved on. Its very existence captured the moment just before an era sunset, when passion momentarily outpaced policy. What made the 1993 Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition so unforgettable was not just what it did, but what it represented. It was the purest expression of the racing dream made tangible, a motorcycle that carried the DNA of Grand Prix success into everyday life. Every detail, from the resonance of its expansion chambers to the way the fairing hugged the frame, was designed to remind you of the racetrack. Riding it was not an act of utility but of devotion, a personal ceremony celebrating speed, control, and connection. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition demanded that you meet it on its terms. It had no patience for shortcuts or hesitation, and that is precisely why it remains iconic. In mastering it, riders discovered more than just mechanical control. They discovered themselves. That clarity, that sense of unity between human and machine, is what gives the RGV250 its enduring legend. By the time the Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition reached riders in 1993, the winds of change were already gathering. Governments were tightening emission regulations, and the two-stroke engine, once the symbol of racing purity, was facing extinction. The Lucky Strike Edition would soon be remembered not only as a high point of performance engineering, but also as one of the last machines to embody the unfiltered spirit of the two-stroke era. It became both a celebration and a farewell, a mechanical masterpiece caught between passion and progress. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition represented the pinnacle of Suzuki's small displacement performance philosophy. Its engine was tuned to perfection, its chassis honed through racing experience, and its aesthetics tied directly to the brand's championship legacy. Yet, while its engineering pushed the boundaries of what a road-legal machine could be, the very attributes that made it thrilling, its sharp power delivery, its sound, its emissions, made it incompatible with the future. As the industry shifted toward 4-strokes and electronic controls, bikes like the RGV250 became relics of a time when engineers and riders shared a common goal: pure speed achieved through precision and courage. Collectors and enthusiasts today regard the Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition as a benchmark of engagement. To own one is to hold a piece of history that demands care, respect, and mechanical literacy. Every restoration project brings challenges: sourcing original fairings, replicating the distinctive paint, rebuilding the delicate power valves. But for those committed to authenticity, the reward is unmatched. The satisfaction of hearing that sharp exhaust crackle to life, of feeling the immediate throttle response, connects owners to a lineage of racers and dreamers who lived for the pursuit of perfection. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition also influenced generations of sport bikes that followed, even if their engines changed. Suzuki's later designs carried forward lessons in chassis dynamics, mass centralization, and aerodynamic balance first refined in the RGV platform. The spirit of that innovation continued, even as the combustion philosophy evolved. Modern motorcycles may rely on sensors and algorithms, but their pursuit of rider feedback, that balance between control and sensation, traces directly back to the RGV's DNA. Among fans, the Lucky Strike Edition has achieved near-mythical status. Its scarcity ensures that few have experienced it firsthand, yet its reputation travels through stories, photos, and footage that keep the legend alive. Every surviving example tells its own tale. Some meticulously preserved in collections, others still running on track days, emitting that unmistakable blue haze. To witness one in motion today is to glimpse a moment when engineering and artistry coexisted without compromise. For riders who came of age in the 1990s, the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition represents more than nostalgia. It embodies the freedom and audacity of a generation unafraid of mechanical intimacy. The sound of its exhaust, the rhythm of its engine, and the feel of its narrow power band formed the soundtrack of their youth. Riding it demanded attention, skill, and humility. It taught lessons no modern electronic aid can replace: the importance of throttle finesse, body position, and the ability to read traction through instinct rather than data. Those who mastered it often say it changed the way they approached every motorcycle afterward. The end of the two-stroke era was not a failure of technology, but an evolution of priorities. Manufacturers had to balance performance with responsibility. And in that transition, many machines lost a bit of their soul. The Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition serves as a reminder of what happens when performance is pursued without restraint, when design decisions are driven by passion rather than regulation. Its simplicity, its raw mechanical honesty, and its willingness to test the limits of both rider and engineer made it special. Decades later, the Lucky Strike Edition remains one of the most collectible sport bikes in existence. Its rarity, combined with its historical significance, keeps its value strong and its reputation untarnished. For those lucky enough to own one, it is not merely an asset, it is a time capsule. Each startup reawakens an era when racing liveries ruled the streets, and every throttle twist carried the scent of two-stroke oil and ambition. The true legacy of the 1993 Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition lies not in statistics or lap times but in emotion. It represented a perfect moment in motorcycle history, when form, function, and freedom aligned. It invited riders to participate in something greater than themselves, to feel connected to the sport at its purest. Even as technology continues to advance, few machines capture that emotional intensity. The RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition did not just set standards, it set memories in motion. Today, when enthusiasts discuss the most influential motorcycles ever built, the conversation often returns to the same qualities the RGV embodied: lightweight precision, instantaneous feedback, and mechanical transparency. It proved that greatness is not measured by horsepower alone, but by how completely a machine can involve its rider. The Lucky Strike Edition remains a living benchmark for what riding used to mean, and what it can still be when passion leads design. The Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition stands today as more than a motorcycle. It is a declaration of what happens when engineering ambition meets unfiltered passion. In 1993, Suzuki distilled everything it had learned from Grand Prix racing into a machine that could exist on public roads. That act alone makes it one of the boldest projects in sport bike history. The Lucky Strike Edition combined artistry and aggression, turning a humble 250 cubic centimeters displacement into a platform capable of thrilling experts and intimidating amateurs. It carried the look and feel of Suzuki's World Championship machines, yet asked riders to handle that experience with maturity and respect. Every aspect of its design reflected intent: the narrow frame for agility, the tuned exhaust for explosive response, and the race livery for instant recognition. When viewed through today's lens, the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition feels like a love letter to a disappearing kind of performance. Modern sport bikes deliver staggering numbers, but they also filter the rider's connection through layers of electronic mediation. The Lucky Strike Edition came from a different philosophy, one where sensation mattered as much as speed, where victory was measured not by lap times but by the feeling of mastery. Its absence of assists made it pure. Its imperfections made it human. Those qualities ensure that even as technology evolves, this motorcycle retains a timeless magnetism. Collectors and historians keep its legacy alive not through nostalgia, but through respect. They recognize that the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition marked the end of a chapter, the closing moment before the curtain fell on two-stroke supremacy. It was the last of the road-going race replicas that demanded full engagement from their riders, and rewarded them with unmatched clarity. Its preservation in private collections and museum exhibits is more than an act of admiration. It is a commitment to remembering an era defined by courage and mechanical artistry. For riders, the lesson endures. The Lucky Strike Edition reminds us that the essence of performance lies in harmony between power and control, machine and human. Its influence can still be felt in every lightweight sport bike that values handling precision and rider feedback over raw horsepower. Suzuki may have moved on to new technologies, but the philosophy that created the RGV250 continues to shape the brand's identity. The pursuit of balance, responsiveness, and excitement remains unchanged, even if the tools have evolved. To encounter a 1993 Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition today is to experience living history. The polished frame, the narrow seat, and the aggressive stance all speak to a design language forged in competition. Fire it up, and the crisp exhaust note immediately transports you to the pit lane of a 1990s Grand Prix. The smell of premix fuel, the sharp clutch engagement, the way it settles into a tense, high-pitched idle. These details create a connection that no digital recreation can replicate. It is not nostalgia. It is presence, a tangible reminder of why people fell in love with motorcycles in the first place. The story of the RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition closes with gratitude. Gratitude for the engineers who dared to chase perfection without compromise, and for the riders who understood the value of effort over convenience. Machines like this are not just built, they are crafted, tested, and lived through. They ask something of you, and in return, they give everything back. That exchange defines the bond between rider and motorcycle, and it is why the Lucky Strike Edition's legend endures. In the end, the 1993 Suzuki RGV250 Lucky Strike Edition is not remembered solely for its performance figures or its striking paint. It is remembered for how it made people feel, for the adrenaline, the respect, the challenge, and the joy it inspired. It was a machine that demanded commitment and rewarded passion. Even decades later, when its engine fires and the air fills with that unmistakable two-stroke scent, it reminds us that some forms of excitement never age. The legend of the Lucky Strike Edition remains alive every time a rider leans into a corner and feels that same pulse of purpose. It is proof that authenticity never goes out of style, and that the spirit of the racetrack can live forever in the heart of a true enthusiast.